The streets of Manhattan pulsed with neon lights and the hum of late-night chatter, but Dinky Doo barely noticed. Her hooves clicked softly against the pavement as she trotted beside her mother, derpy hooves, every step echoing with nervous excitement. This wasn't just another nighttime outing in the city. No, tonight was special. Tonight was Dinky's very first project, her first time kidnapping a pony, her first time smuggling them back to Ponyville, as well as her first time murdering them. She wore a disguise. Of course, her mother told her that they must wear a disguise in order to avoid leaving any hints for the police. Her soft lavender fur was completely hidden beneath a coat of snow-white paint, and her usually wild mane and tail had been dyed a pale, icy blue. Neatly tied up into a prim bun, her mane gave her the appearance of an entirely different filly. Derpy, ever the eccentric mastermind behind this, was almost unrecognizable herself. Her gray coat had been painted over in a deep blue, her golden mane and tail matching in hue. A flowing cape covered her flanks, its ends brushing against the sidewalk with every step, concealing her cutie mark now hidden under layers of paint. She wore a pair of sleek sunglasses borrowed from Vinyl Scratch Dust, one of many favors called in for tonight's operation, as well as carrying a huge duffel bag with things that they need for said operation. Together, they blended into the bustling crowd of Manhattan's nightlife, but they walked with purpose. For behind the playful disguises and glittering city lights, a secret unfolded, and Dinky was about to become a part of it for the very first time.
It had been 2 weeks since Lyra Heartstrings vanished, though the town of Ponyville remained blissfully unaware of her grim fate. There had been no screams, there had been search parties trying to find Lyra, but other than that, Ponyville was quiet. No one suspected that Lyra's final moments had ended in Derpy Hoove's secret cellar, her remains folded into batter and baked into golden, innocent-looking muffins. Those muffins were long gone now. Pinkie Pie and the Cakes had proudly stocked them at Sugar Cube Corner, thrilled with the new recipe Derpy had contributed. They sold fast, dozens devoured by the townsfolk without a second thought. Of course, neither Pinkie nor the other bakers had any idea that the muffin's unique flavor came from something far more disturbing than brown sugar or cinnamon. When Dinky came home from school that afternoon, her saddlebag heavy with books and her head full of thoughts, she found her mother waiting by the basement door. There was a glint in Derpy's eyes, not the usual scatterbrained cheer, but something focused. Intent. Without a word, Derpy led her daughter down the creaking steps into the cellar. The air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of flour, metal, and something far less pleasant. In the center of the room stood a small wooden table, and atop it, a glass jar filled with folded slips of paper. "This," Derpy said, lifting the jar with reverence and setting it on the floor, "is the number system I told you about. Remember? When I was working on Lyra." Dinky's eyes fixed on the jar before nodding. So many pieces of paper. So many names. "You reach in," her mother continued, "but don't look. Turn your head. You don't get to choose who. That's the rule. Whatever name you draw, that's the pony you're going after." The idea was simple, almost childish, like playing hopscotch or Ring Around the Rosies. But the weight of it settled on Dinky's shoulders like a cloak. She stared at the jar, heart thudding. Somewhere in there was a name. A pony. A future victim. She wondered, for just a moment, if her own name was hidden among the rest. Had her mother written it down, just in case? Was anyone truly off limits? She didn't ask. She didn't want to know. All that remained now was to draw a name, and take the next step into the life her mother had chosen for them both. "So, Dinky," Derpy Hooves began, her voice light and almost cheerful, "I had a thought yesterday. I've decided you're finally old enough to help me with more than just baking muffins. This time, you'll be helping with the secret ingredient, too." Dinky Doo's eyes widened with delight, her mouth forming a grin as wide as her face. "Wait, really, Mama? You want me to help prepare the meat?" she squeaked, barely able to contain her excitement. Derpy nodded, her wings flaring with pride. "Yes, dear. Every step. From the kidnapping to the smuggling, all the way to butchering and baking. The little filly's joy exploded as she bounced. I get to help my mama. I get to help my mama. Derpy watched her with a wide, doting smile, before lifting off the ground and gently scooping her daughter back toward the center of the room, where the jar sat waiting. Now, calm down, dear, she cooed, lowering her gently. We must focus. It's time. Put your hoof in the jar and pick a number. Let fate decide our next victim. The little lavender filly nodded eagerly and twisted the lid off the glass jar, the metal clinking as she tossed it aside. With barely contained excitement, Dinky Doo slipped her hoof into the sea of folded papers, stirring them around in silence. Derpy Hooves watched without a word, her mismatched eyes fixed on her daughter's face as she fished through the names, finally pulling one free. Dinky hesitated, glancing up at her mother for permission. Derpy gave a small, approving nod, and the filly carefully unfolded the slip of paper. Inside was a crude drawing of a pair of scissors with apple-shaped handles, along with scribbled words. Babs seed, filly, Manhattan. Dinky's horn glowed softly as she levitated the paper in a golden aura and floated it up to her mother. Babs seed is next, she announced. Derpy's face lit up, her wings fluttering with delight as she clapped her hooves together. Oh goody. She's perfect for your first project, Dinky. A filly just like you and chubby too, so you'll have plenty to work with. Dinky's excited expression wavered slightly, replaced by a flicker of concern. But Mama, she said softly, Babs lives in Manhattan. How are we going to bring her back to Ponyville without being seen? Derpy smiled reassuringly, stepping closer. That's why disguises come in handy, Dinkles, she said with a wink. I've got plenty of fur paint and washable dye for us to go undercover. We'll bring duct tape, a little leftover sleeping powder. And once she's out, we'll smuggle her in a big duffel bag. Easy as pie. Derpy Hooves gently scooped Dinky Doo into her arms and placed the little filly on her back with care. Now, we should start getting things ready for your project, she said warmly, her wings folding snugly at her sides as she began trotting up the creaky wooden stairs. Dinky nestled in close, nodding in quiet excitement. We'll head out to Manhattan tomorrow night, Saturday, Derpy added with a faint smile. As they reached the hallway, she turned toward Dinky's room, her hooves light against the floorboards. It was time to prepare for what awaited them in the shadows of the coming night. The neon glow of Manhattan painted the night sky as Derpy and her daughter, Dinky Doo, ambled down the bustling street. The city throbbed with a frenetic energy, a symphony of clattering hooves and echoing chatter. Suddenly, Derpy halted, her eyes fixated on a lone figure across the avenue. A young earth pony filly, her coat a warm brown-orange hue, skipped along, the hot pink strands of her mane bouncing with each step. But it was the cutiemark, a pair of scissors, that truly riveted Derpy's attention. A guttural whisper escaped her lips, a mix of recognition and something far more sinister. That's her. That's Babs seed. Dinky Doo, ever observant, followed her mother's gaze. Her eyes lingered on the filly, taking in the details that only a child might notice. Mama, she has an open can of soda in her bag, Dinky exclaimed, her voice laced with innocent curiosity, as she pointed towards the bulging saddlebag. A small, seemingly insignificant sack of bits hung around Babs seed's neck as well, glittering under the city lights. A spark of an idea ignited in Dinky's mind, a plan hatched in the shadows of the towering buildings. What if one of us distracts her, and the other could sneak the sleepy powder into her drink? Derpy's eyes gleamed with newfound purpose, her mind racing to connect the dots of Dinky's nascent strategy. And when she sips it, Derpy began, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, she'll pass out from the sleeping powder, and that's when we can get her. The image of Babs seed, vulnerable and unconscious, flashed before her. A wicked smile curled at the corner of her lips. With a shared understanding, they both crossed the street. The lure of the arcade beckoned, promising a haven where their plan could unfold away from the prying eyes of the city. The arcade was a cacophony of flashing lights and blaring electronic noises, a sensory overload designed to enthrall young minds. Rows upon rows of gleaming machines stood shoulder to shoulder, each vying for attention with its own unique brand of digital chaos. Fillies and colts, their faces illuminated by the flickering screens, jostled for position, their pockets heavy with hard-earned bits ready to be surrendered to the insatiable hunger of the games. It was not uncommon to see young ponies wandering alone in Manhattan, finding solace and entertainment in places like this, or perhaps visiting friends in the towering apartment buildings that surrounded the arcade. Derpy Hooves and Dinky Doo slipped into the throngs of young ponies, their eyes darting around the room, scanning for their target. They attempted to blend into the surroundings, masking their true intentions behind casual glances and feigned interest in the games. It was Dinky who spotted her first. There, amidst the flashing lights and roaring sounds, stood Babs Seed, transfixed by a claw machine. The object of her desire was a brown speckled stuffed rabbit, tantalizingly close yet beyond her reach with each failed attempt. "You go up and talk to her," Derpy instructed, gently nudging her daughter forward. "And once she's distracted, I'll slip the powder into her soft drink." Dinky Doo, with a determined nod, trotted towards the brownish-orange filly, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Derpy Hooves watched from afar, her gaze unwavering, as her daughter approached her unsuspecting prey. The plan has been set in motion. Dinky Doo, her heart thumping with a mixture of anticipation and a touch of mischievous excitement, watched as the young earth pony, Babs Seed, stood poised before the claw machine. Babs was just about to deposit another golden bit into the coin slot, her eyes gleaming with determination, when she seemed to catch Dinky Doo's reflection in the glass. The pony hesitated, her focus shifting from the enticing plushies within to the figure standing behind her. Turning with a hint of southern hospitality, she asked, "Do you wanna turn next?" Dinky shook her head quickly, a nervous flutter in her chest. No, I was just watching you." She paused, her gaze drifting around the bustling arcade, taking in the flashing lights and cacophony of sounds. In the corner, almost forgotten amidst the newer, flashier games, stood a Dance Revolution machine, its platform untouched and beckoning. It was then that a cunning idea sparked in Dinky's mind, a plan that might just offer an escape from the awkwardness of the claw machine. "Hey would you like to play DDR with me?" she blurted out, a hopeful note creeping into her voice. Babs Seed blinked, her expression a mixture of surprise and contemplation. "I never played Dance Revolution before," she confessed, her southern drawl becoming more pronounced. "So, I'm not sure if I'm any good at it." "Don't worry, I'm not so good at the game either," Dinky admitted with a nervous giggle, hoping to ease Babs's apprehension. "But at least we'll have fun together, come on, I'll even pay for both of our goes." A moment of tense silence hung in the air as Babs Seed paused, seemingly weighing her options. Dinky Doo froze, her hooves feeling like lead, silently praying that her ploy had worked. Relief washed over her as Babs finally nodded, a grin spreading across her face. "Sure, let's play," she replied, and the two fillies happily trotted towards the DDR machine, its two platforms and flashing arrows glowed in the room. Babs Seed carefully removed her saddlebag, placing it gently to the side before stepping onto the platform, standing squarely in the center. She turned to Dinky Doo, who was approaching at a slower pace. "Come on Babs paused, furrowing her brow. "Oh shit. I didn't catch your name, what's your name?" It's Sapphire Doulots." Dinky lied, her eyes searching around for her mother before getting on the platform of the DDR machine and place a golden bit into the machine before starting to select a song. Babs Seed's face lit up, a genuine smile gracing her features as her name was spoken. "Nice to meet ya, my name's Babs Seed," she announced with a warm enthusiasm, eager to connect with the disguised filly before her. Unbeknownst to Babs, while she was engrossed in conversation, the ever-resourceful Derpy Hooves seized the opportune moment. The sound of beeps and boops emanating from the arcade machines provided the perfect cover as Derpy stealthily trotted over to the saddlebag, each hoofstep masked by the chaotic symphony of the arcade. With practiced ease, she unzipped the massive duffel bag, revealing its contents. She plunged her hoof inside, and retrieved a small jar filled with a mysterious sleeping powder, her intentions veiled in secrecy. Meanwhile, Dinky Doo and Babs Seed, oblivious to the unfolding plan, were completely lost in the rhythm of a catchy, techno song. Their hooves moved in perfect sync with the music, their bodies swaying and jumping with youthful energy. Amidst the vibrant chaos, Dinky Doo subtly side-eyed her mother, a silent communication passing between them. She offered a quick, almost imperceptible nod, acknowledging the signal, before swiftly turning her attention back to the flashing screen. In that fleeting moment, Derpy Hooves acted with swift precision, carefully sprinkling a generous amount of the sleeping powder into Babs's can of raspberry soda, ensuring the effects would be potent. With the deed done, she quickly closed the lid of the jar, concealing the evidence, and tucked it back into the depths of her duffel bag, leaving no trace of her clandestine maneuver. The dance session came to an end, leaving Babs Seed drenched in sweat and visibly exhausted. Dinky Doo, equally drained, joined her in hopping off the arcade machine, their youthful exuberance momentarily subdued by the physical exertion. Babs, feeling parched, instinctively reached for her bag, retrieving the can of raspberry soda that had been innocently sitting there, waiting for her. Without a second thought, she popped open the top and took a long, refreshing sip, unaware of the potent ingredient that had been secretly added to her favorite beverage. "Wow, I never knew you could dance so well, Sapphire," Babs Seed said, flipping her bangs out of her eyes as she took a long sip from her drink, then tossed the empty can into a nearby bin. "And I never knew you could dance so well, Babs Seed," Dinky replied with a giggle. As she spoke, her eyes flicked toward the arcade exit where her mother stood, giving her a subtle nod, confirmation that the drink had been drugged. All that was left now was to lure the filly outside. "Hey, Babs," Dinky said suddenly, slipping deeper into her false persona. "I was wondering, wanna come hang out at my apartment? We could play some video games." Babs tilted her head, frowning slightly. "Wouldn't your parents be upset if you brought some random stranger over?" she asked, a note of hesitation in her voice. Dinky laughed, brushing the concern aside with a wave of her hoof. "Oh, don't worry about it. My parents don't mind." She turned and began walking toward the exit. "Come on, let's go meet my mum and dad." Babs blinked, but the smile slowly returned to her face. "Alright, sure," she said, trailing after the unicorn. She let out a small yawn as she walked, her steps unsteady now, the drug starting to seep into her system. As they left the bright hum of the arcade behind, Dinky Doo led Babs Seed further away, guiding her toward a shadowy alley under the pretense of heading home. She kept a careful eye on the filly, whose steps were growing sluggish, the sleeping powder was taking hold. Overhead, Derpy Hooves soared silently, circling like a vulture awaiting its prey's collapse. Her sharp gaze never left Babs. Once they entered the alleyway, Babs suddenly stopped, concern flashing across her drowsy eyes. "Babs, what's wrong?" Dinky asked, her voice light and feigned with innocence. "Why? You sure this the right way to your house?" Babs mumbled, her words slurring as she swayed on unsteady legs. Dinky fought back a grin. Then, with a soft thud of hooves, Derpy landed behind her. Her dark shades tumbled off, revealing her unmistakable crossed yellow eyes. Babs turned slowly, startled. Who da hell are you?" she cried, panic rising with her accent thickened by fear. But her legs gave out beneath her, leaving her crumpled and helpless on the pavement. Her head lolled as she struggled to stay awake, blinking rapidly at the two ponies who now closed in. "Relax now, Babs Seed," Dinky cooed, her voice soft and disturbingly sweet as she gently stroked the filly's pink mane. "Just close your eyes. We'll take care of you." Babs tried to speak, but the words never came. She fell limp, slipping into unconsciousness. Dinky smiled at the fallen filly, then turned to her mother, who was already pulling a roll of duct tape from a duffel bag. "Excellent work, Dinky. Now, keep her wrists and ankles together so I can tape them, Derpy instructed. Dinky nodded, and together, the two ponies silently set to work. Babs' seed stirred groggily, her eyes fluttering open to impenetrable darkness. A strange, musty scent filled her nose, and the sensation of soft, scratchy fabric pressed in on all sides. Confused and disoriented, she tried to shift her legs, only to find them bound tightly, unmoving. Panic surged through her small body as the realization struck, she was trapped. Her heart pounded as she took a trembling breath and let out a desperate, muffled cry. That's when she discovered something else. A thick piece of duct tape was wrapped firmly around her mouth, stifling her voice. Suddenly, a sliver of dim light pierced the darkness as the bag she was confined in opened slightly. A gray hoof reached in, holding a damp cloth. Babs barely had a moment to react before it was pressed firmly over her nose. The sharp, chemical scent burned her nostrils, and her struggling grew weaker as her vision swam. Within seconds, her body went limp, and the darkness took her once again. Babs' seed awoke with a start. Gone was the stuffy darkness of the duffel bag and the duct tape that was around her legs and mouth. Now, she found herself lying flat on her back atop a cold, metal table. Her limbs were stretched out, exposed and vulnerable, her hooves angled awkwardly. The surface beneath her was slick in places, crusted with dark, dried blood that clung to her fur like dust on an old book. At first, she thought she was free, no ropes, no chains. But when she tried to move, nothing happened. Her legs refused to respond. Panic bloomed in her chest as she stared down at her unresponsive limbs. Then came the pain, deep and sharp, radiating from her lower back. It wasn't just soreness, it felt wrong, like some pony had cut into her. Heavy hoofsteps echoed down a staircase. She turned her head toward the sound, her breath catching as two familiar ponies descended into the dimly lit basement. Derpy Hooves, the gray Pegasus with the mismatched eyes, smiled brightly as if they were old friends reuniting. Just behind her, Dinky Doo followed with a calm, unreadable expression, pushing a metal trolley that rattled with tools as it rolled across the concrete floor. Babs stared at them in horror. "Hello, Babs Seed," Derpy said sweetly, raising a hoof in a cheerful wave. "So nice to see you're finally awake." Babs tried again to move, to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. Dinky said nothing as she climbed onto a nearby stool, levitating a scalpel from the trolley with quiet precision. Her magic shimmered faintly around the blade, reflecting the cold basement light. What is going on here?" Babs cried, her voice trembling as she stared up at the unicorn filly and her smiling mother. The words hung in the air, bubbly and bright yet laced with something sinister. "Your number has been chosen, Babs," Dinky Doo chirped, her horn radiating a cheerful yellow glow that did little to soothe the dread creeping up Babs' Seed's spine. The young filly's green eyes fixated on the levitating scalpel Dinky held, the metal gleaming under the dim light of the room, reflecting back a world of pure terror. "And this is my very first project, isn't that exciting?" "Project? And number? What the hey are y'all talking about?" Babs stammered, her voice trembling, a desperate plea for understanding in the face of unimaginable horror. Derpy Hooves, a figure of unsettling calm, chuckled softly, a sound that scraped against Babs' nerves like nails on a chalkboard. The air crackled with an unspoken threat, a promise of something gruesome hidden beneath the seemingly innocent facade. "Well, you see, Babs," Derpy began, her voice taking on a disturbingly casual tone, "every pony, including you, has a number. And when that number is drawn, well, we go get the pony." She paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air before continuing, her words like a chilling breeze. "What we do to the ponies is, we slaughter them and bake them into muffins." A strangled cry escaped Babs' throat, raw and filled with disbelief. "Y'all are cannibals," she wailed, the realization crashing down on her with the force of a physical blow. Derpy hooves erupted into laughter, a high-pitched, unsettling sound that echoed through the room, each note driving the knife of fear deeper into Babs' heart. This couldn't be real, this had to be some sort of nightmare. Not just us, Derpy said, the sneer still etched on her face. Every pony who has tried our muffins are unknowingly cannibals too. She stepped back, gesturing towards her daughter with a strangely maternal pride. Now, keep quiet. This is my daughter's first time murdering a pony, do not judge her too harshly if she messes up. The casual cruelty in her voice sent shivers down Babs' spine. Derpy hooves watched closely as Dinky prepared to cut Babs' throat, but the young unicorn was shaking, tears welling up in her eyes as she gazed at Babs' frightened face. Memories of playing DDR with the filly and sharing friendly chats flooded Dinky's mind, making the thought of ending her life unbearable. Unable to proceed, Dinky Doo dropped the scalpel onto the table, the metallic clang punctuating the heavy silence, and Derpy, concerned, quickly trotted over to her child. Derpy hooves, her eyes filled with concern, gently placed a comforting hoof on Dinky Doo's trembling shoulder. "Dinky? What's wrong, honey?" she asked softly, her voice laced with the warmth only a mother could possess. She noticed the distress etched on her daughter's face, a stark contrast to the usual cheerful demeanor she always carried. Something was clearly amiss, and Derpy's maternal instincts kicked into high gear. I can't do it, Mama." Dinky Doo wailed, her voice cracking with each syllable. Tears welled up in her eyes, threatening to spill over and cascade down her cheeks. "I can't kill Babs," she confessed, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. "She was too nice, I don't think she deserves any of this." The weight of the situation seemed to crush her fragile spirit, leaving her feeling utterly helpless. Derpy's expression hardened, but she maintained a calm and firm tone as she addressed her distraught foal. "But Dinky," she began, her voice devoid of any warmth. "Her number was pulled, and we can't just let her go because she would know who we are, and she might tell the police on us." Each word was carefully chosen, designed to penetrate Dinky's emotional turmoil and remind her of the harsh reality they faced. Derpy continued, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "And lastly, Dinky Doo, we already broke her spine, so she can't move at all. How are we going to explain to any pony why she lost the ability to move her legs?" The question hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the irreversible damage they had inflicted. There was no turning back now, the consequences of their actions were staring them in the face. Dinky hung her head sadly, shame and regret washing over her in waves. I'm sorry, Mama," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I'm ready for this." Derpy hooves smiled gently, her voice calm and kind. "Dinky, it's all right. I understand." She paused, offering comfort. "This is a lot to take in, so it's okay if you need some time to get used to it. I'll handle things for now, and you can give it another try when you're ready." Dinky Doo's mother softly brushed her hair with a hoof, and Dinky sniffled before nodding. With care, she slowly lowered the scalpel, using her magic to place it gently onto her mother's hoof. Derpy hooves fluttered over to the table where Babs lay trembling, the brownish-orange filly shaking in fear as the gray Pegasus hovered above her, scalpel poised against her neck, ready to make the first cut. Dinky Doo turned away to fetch a bucket for her mother but froze when Derpy's soft voice stopped her. "I can't kill Babs," she confessed, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. "She was too nice, I don't think she deserves any of this." The weight of the situation seemed to crush her fragile spirit, leaving her feeling utterly helpless. "You know, Dinky," Derpy began gently, never taking her eyes off Babs, whose tears traced down her cheeks as she silently begged for mercy. "When I was your age, I was scared too, scared of taking on my first project. But my dad, your grandfather, gave me some advice that helped me through." "What advice did Grandpa give?" Dinky asked quietly, turning back to her mother, the metal bucket glowing softly in her yellow aura. "When you hesitate, snuff it out quick, Derpy said firmly. Stab first before it stabs right through your heart. She smiled, a warm glint in her eyes. That's how I got here today, baking muffins and doing my mail-mare deliveries. If it weren't for your grandfather, none of us would be enjoying these tasty treats because no one would have taken on the job. No, there wouldn't be any pony, Dinky admitted, trotting back to stand beside Derpy. Just Mr. and Mrs. Cake's muffins, but they wouldn't taste the same. That's correct, dear, she said, nodding approvingly. She raised the scalpel, poised to bring it down toward Babs Seed's trembling neck. But before the blade could fall, it froze in midair, enveloped in a soft yellow glow. Mama, wait, cried Dinky Doo, her voice clear and urgent. Derpy blinked and turned, curiosity overtaking her expression as she looked at her daughter. I want to do it, Dinky said, her tone almost innocent. A smile crept across Derpy's face. Without hesitation, she handed the scalpel over and gently lifted her daughter onto the table. Dinky now stood above the terrified earth pony, whose eyes were wide with panic. Babs writhed, her breath quickening as she watched the blade descend. Dinky, no, she screamed. You can't. Her words were abruptly cut short, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound. Dinky had struck quickly, slashing clean across the neck. Blood gushed out in a thick stream, spilling down the table. Derpy watched with eerie satisfaction, her wings fluttering slightly at the sight. As the crimson liquid began to pool, she let out a squeak of surprise. The bucket, she exclaimed, quickly grabbing a nearby metal pail to catch the spilling blood. Oopsie, I forgot about the bucket. Dinky giggled, watching the flow with childlike fascination. Derpy gave her daughter a reassuring look, warm, proud, and chilling in its tenderness. Once Derpy Hooves and Dinky Doo were certain that all the blood had drained and Babs Seed had taken her final breath, the two ponies moved with a quiet efficiency. Without a word, Derpy passed a hacksaw to her daughter, who took it into her magical grip with practiced ease. Dinky began her grim task, methodically sawing through flesh and bone. First the front legs, then the back, and finally the head, each motion steady and deliberate, as if this were nothing more than a routine chore shared between mother and daughter. With the final bone cut clean, Dinky Doo let the blood-crusted hacksaw fall to the floor with a heavy clang, its teeth slick with crimson. Her breath was calm, her expression focused as she reached again for the scalpel. Holding it in her magical grip, she pressed the blade to Babs Seed's abdomen and made a long, deliberate incision down the center. The skin parted with little resistance, and a faint steam rose from the open cavity. Dinky used her hooves to peel back the flaps of flesh, revealing the dull sheen of lifeless organs nestled inside. The scent was thick and metallic, hanging heavily in the air. Derpy Hooves stepped forward silently, setting an empty metal bucket beside her daughter with a soft clink. She said nothing, only watched with pride gleaming in her mismatched eyes. Dinky worked with care and precision, gently reaching in to extract the liver first, followed by the heart, still warm but unmoving, the stomach, kidneys, lungs, and every piece in between. Each organ made a soft, wet sound as it was pulled free and dropped into the bucket. It was methodical. Controlled. A morbid sort of ritual, and mother and daughter carried it out in perfect, chilling harmony. With practiced ease, Dinky Doo pressed the scalpel to Babs Seed's cold flesh and began the meticulous task of removing the skin. She worked slowly, carefully guiding the blade beneath the surface to peel away the hide in long, even strips, exposing the raw muscle and sinew beneath. Each tug of her magic revealed more of the lifeless body, and the air grew thick with the scent of iron and exposed tissue. Derpy Hooves soon joined her, kneeling beside her daughter with a serene smile, taking over part of the grisly work. She began the deboning process, her hooves firm but gentle as she cut into joints and pried bones free from their tendons, placing them in a neat pile off to the side. The two ponies worked in unspoken harmony, mother and daughter immersed in their craft. As Dinky flayed the torso, she looked up with a cheerful glint in her eyes. "Do you think this is enough skin to make a cutie mark apron?" she asked brightly. Derpy, busy carving a precise circle around the cutie mark on Babs' left flank, paused and turned to her daughter with an approving smile. "This is plenty of skin for an apron," she replied, lifting the severed patch of flesh with delicate care. She walked over to the nearby table and gently laid the cutie mark flat to let the blood begin to dry. "And if you collect enough, you can put Babs' mark right in the center, as a reminder that she was your first." As Derpy Hooves carefully began slicing around the cutie mark on Babs' remaining flank, her scalpel gliding with practiced precision, Dinky Doo stood nearby, watching intently. The young unicorn tilted her head, deep in thought, before turning to her mother with a curious gleam in her eyes. "What kind of muffins should I make from Babs?" she asked innocently, as though pondering flavors for a bake sale. Derpy didn't look up from her work, her voice calm and affectionate. "Anything you like, Dinky. It is your first project, after all." Dinky nodded, tapping her chin with a hoof, her eyes momentarily drifting to the bloodied table and the faint apple-shaped mark on the strip of flank her mother was peeling away. A smile slowly spread across her face. "Apple muffins," she declared, her tone light and cheerful.